Next talk will be by Éléonore, and she will talk about telling stories with data through interactive web visualization without learning new tools. We welcome Éléonore with a good round of applause.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me, the organizer, for having me talking today. I'm going to talk about telling stories, and it's in the sense of getting insights from datasets. And my name is Éléonore, but you can say Éléonore or whatever. I think I will know you're talking about me. So let's do this. Who am I? I am a developer without a computer science background. I actually have a background in biomedical research. And a few years ago, I learned programming with Python. And after that, I worked as a full-stack developer with Python, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and all that. In London, by the way. And then my latest position was actually not with Python, but so I sort of cheated on Python with Clojure, which is also a language that I like. And my title was data scientist. Whatever that means, really. But yeah, so that's what I've been doing lately. And I want to start, because of this data science thing, I want to start on what is this talk about and who is it for. So it's not aimed as the data scientist in the room, because as I said, it's like I'm a developer. I don't define myself as a data scientist. My point of view is that everyone has to deal with data. So whether you're a data scientist or not, you have data from your logs, your alerts, you have data on how your user interact with the UI and things like that. And actually, I already thought about how can I get a data set and get some information out of it to share it at my previous job, because we were working on creating this web platform for users to create models. And with Intercom that we're using for user support, we were, on top of the user support, we had data on how people were using the platform. And it's not only useful for us data scientists that were doing, like creating the models, but it's also useful for the person working on the front end, actually knowing if the user can actually go around the website, and also in the back end knowing can the users actually upload their data and download the output. So I thought, well, unfortunately we didn't have the time, but wouldn't it be great to have a way to really quickly get insights from this data, especially because we were going from the alpha release to the beta release. So it would have been really useful to get insight from that so we can incorporate it and improve for the beta. So that's all that to say, this is interesting, please. So that's interesting for different kind of purpose. Professionally, maybe one time you'll have like this data and you want to do something, but you don't have that much time and it's not part of your day job, but you want to add value. So maybe you can, in an hour or so, do something and bring value to your team. And another thing is also for personal projects. So actually the project I'm going to show to you later is a personal project. So this came about as I was looking at, there was this data set. And I was wondering which kind of Python libraries, there's so many, which one should I use and how can I get insight really quickly. So actually this slide and the examples are on GitHub at this repository. So if you are interested, you can actually, anytime you think that you want to do the same thing, you can actually, you're welcome to reuse some of my code. So yes, I was talking about the different Python libraries. So this is actually a clicking link. If you have the slide, you can go to this blog post, and it's tells you about these 10 useful Python libraries for data visualizations, and I have a few of them here on the slide. So the main one is matplotlib that you must know about, and some others are sort of visual improvement on the plots generated by matplotlibs, or like bokeh, they can be like a layer on top of D3 interactive visualization JavaScript library. So when you want to visualize your data in Python, there are quite a lot of tools available. And what I'm saying here is not don't use those and I have a better way. It's more each library has different use, and I would recommend, if you have the time, to try several of those. But in this particular instance, I don't have that much time to test all those libraries, and I want to get something out of my data set. So that's the idea behind this presentation. So it's not me telling you, you have to do this. It's more saying, I did it that way, and if you're interested, get my code and reuse it to do the same. So Altair is the library that I will be talking about. That's the one I tried and I thought could solve my problem. And it's on GitHub, so you can find it here. And the two main contributors are Jake Vanderplat and Brian Granger, based in the US. And I think from what I saw, part of Jake's job at the University of Washington is to actually develop tools for data visualization. So not only is it actually worked on, I think that's part of his day job to actually improve this library. So if you look at the documentation, you'll see that the Altair is a Python API that is based on something else. So it's not based like some other Python libraries on matplotlib, of improving matplotlib plots, but it's based on this thing. So what is actually, it's called Figurelike. So now I'm going to, what is this Figurelike thing? So it's a JSON syntax, and it's made to as a simple way to create interactive graphics, so things that look like that. So at this point, I'm thinking that looks really fancy, and I think I would like, if there's an easy way and fast way to create those, I would really much like to try it. So simplicity is one of the key things behind Altair. And yeah, and they aim again to produce this kind of beautiful visualization. I expected interactive visualization as well, but I will get back to that later. And then writing a minimum amount of code so that we can do it quite fast. A note here is that, so it's still at an early stage, and it's actually going to be, there is going to be a new release quite soon. So if you want to try Altair, so this is what you'll see in the install page. For all you good Pythonistas that use Python 3, it's really simple. You install the library, and you need to upgrade your notebook so that you can use a Jupyter notebook extension, which is called IPython Vega. And it's used to be able to render those Vega-Lite plots in your notebook. Or if you use Conda, it's even faster. Well, unlike you, I'm not a really good Pythonista in the sense that I still use Python 2. And so it's still pretty simple. It's just one extra line to create a virtual environment with Python 3 and then install all of this, because otherwise you would think it worked because Altair is installed, but then you never see the output of your plots code in your notebook. So that's it. And once you've installed your this extension, it tells you that before running your starting your notebook, you need to enable it with this command. oops. So next step. So you enter this command, just start your notebook. It's as simple as that. Then you import chart and load dataset. Here I'm trying to reproduce the example in the documentation, basically. And so we are using one of the example dataset that is already in the library, and it's about cars. Well, I don't know that much about cars, but so that's what the dataset looks like. Data starting from the 70s on different cars built in different countries, their name, a lot of their performance, and all this kind of information. Oops. No. And oh yeah. And then to reproduce this example, that is the one in the docs, is quite simple. So you create a chart object and just call this mark circle method for a dot plot, and just specify from this data set, which I forgot to say, the load data set actually creates, behind the scene, creates a pandas data frame. So here it's selecting the column from the data frame. And yeah, and that's actually as simple as that. So that's really little code. And you have already reproduced that. And you might have seen these little links below the graph. So using that, you can actually see what is this Figurelike JSON thing, either by viewing the source, opening in this editor, or just using this to.json function. You can see that. So it's just creating this JSON of all the values, and then you'll see just after that you'll have information about what kind of plot it is and what the axes are. So quite simple. Then the next step is I want to be able to share these results. So I thought, oh, there's a function called to.html, so why not use it? And it's as simple as this step, and then writing to my file. And it generates, so there's, in the library, there's an HTML template, a default template, and it contains a link to D3, Figurelike, and the library that enables you to embed the Figurelike inside the HTML. And then, as I said, you're creating, so this JSON with the data, and then this says what kind of plot it is, and this encoding part tells you so what section of the data is to be used and what is to be used with the color, and then just use vega.embed to get your visualization into this div. But this happens behind the scenes, so you don't necessarily need to care. Then I don't want to create an app from scratch, so I thought that the easier way was to take advantage of GitHub Pages. I don't know if you've used them, but it's quite simple. In your GitHub repository, you go to the settings and you choose which branch you want to use for the GitHub page, and then you will have a static website at this address, but you need to rename your HTML to index.html because that's what it's looking for. So in this case, I'm looking at my dataset, creating a plot. Then I commit and push my changing to GitHub, and then add this URL, which is my GitHub username, .github.io / the name of my project. Then I have my simple plot that is here. So it feels like I have some kind of workflow going on, but the thing is it's really simple. So I'm going for something simple, but not as simple. I would like to be able to share more than just this one plot and nothing else. So I looked into Altair source code, and I looked a bit more at how does this to.html function work. So it uses the chart object, and then you can specify a template, all the URL for the library needed. Oops, sorry. And then I was quite happy to find that actually I can add in more information with keyworded argument. So it's what I did. So I sort of hacked it to create the output that I wanted. So I decided I want my information displayed on this one simple page with a navbar. The title is something that I can already give to the function. And then some sort of hacking to add the navbar, some kind of text about what I'm trying to do here, then several visualizations, not just the one, and some kind of conclusion on what I've seen from the visualization and references. And so this is those are the two extra plots that I added, sort of testing the capability of the library. So it's still quite as simple. I'm using mark bar for the histogram and mark line for line plots. And there are also different ways of specifying the x and y axis. So you can use these x or y functions to give a bit more information. And because that's sort of a hack, I cannot use, or at least I don't think I can use the chart object created here directly. So I'm just passing them into the toHTML function as JSON. So just converting them. And here I go. So I used this cars data, the example data set about cars manufacturing. And so I'm sort of saying what I'm trying to do here, looking at the consumption, performance, country of origin. And I have my 3 plots. So this one a bit more general, looking at the miles per gallon, these kind of things. And again, this one that is a bit more complex and was the one in the example, which is actually, it's kind of funny because the first keynote was talking about car manufacturing, and I don't know much about cars, but so the higher the miles per gallon and the lower the horsepower, so the more performant they are, from what I get from that. And there's, it feels like there are less US, cars from the US, but I don't know, could be due to this drop in the 80s that was mentioned this morning. And so that's my basic example, using an example data set and trying to see if I can do something out of it. And you can find it at this URL. I also wanted to see if I could add some type of interactivity to the plots. I think that's quite nice and useful sometimes, depending on the plot. The thing is, Altair at the moment only supports the first version, the version Visualite 1, and it doesn't have this interactivity. But because I've communicated with the main contributors, and it's telling me he's preparing for the next release, so it will enable interactivity. And so that's again another hack, which is getting into the JSON itself and added the piece of code that I saw in the Visualite documentation. So I can add the zooming ability, for example, and here I can select different years and be able to make one parameter, like to change one parameter and see the output on that, which is a bit more code, but it's quite straightforward with the example, and hopefully really soon it will be even easier via Altair and not just modifying the JSON. So this is the step I took. So getting a data set. In this case, I didn't really transform it, but there are some functions in Altair to do that. I created my plots from that, and in the end, I actually created a custom HTML template, but from that, I get my HTML file, and here I'm relying, that's on Git and GitHub, in order to have this static page that I can share with anyone and present what I've been doing. So that's my actual project. It's not really cheerful, so bear with me. That's the data set I wanted to look at. So I've been interested in humanitarian data by being a part of the humanitarian mapping community, and I saw this platform called the Humanitarian Data Exchange, which is actually managed by an organization from the UN, and just wanted to look at what kind of data set did they have. And that was actually a few years back, and it was during the recent Ebola crisis that everyone heard about, I'm sure. And this data set contains information for all the outbreaks before this one, and I was wondering, is there anything from this data set that could be used to understand better like how these outbreaks come about and how can they be avoided? Yeah, and the data set can be found here, because maybe I'm not the only one interested in, yeah. Okay. Okay. So here is how I created my project, which is another GitHub repository for which I have the link at the end. So this time I'm not using a built-in dataset, so I'm getting in my CSV using pandas, the read CSV function, so quite simple. And to show you what this looks like, it's a very simple, very small data set with data from 76 to 2012 with information of the dates, the countries, and the casualties, basically, how many cases are reported and how many deaths among those people. So there are actually been only, before that there had been only 33 outbreaks, so kind of hard to create any kind of models, but let's see what kind of information can we get from it. So it happened in all those countries, and so it's obviously mainly in the Democratic Republic of Congo, also quite a lot in Uganda. Then using a slightly different type of plots, trying to see when this happened, because obviously they're separated by countries, but as you know, depending on how people move around, it can be at the same time there seem to be two outbreaks in two different countries, while it's actually one that has expanded to another country. So it started in the 70s, actually two separate outbreaks from what I read, in the DRC and in Sudan. And we can imagine that maybe one person traveled, no. Wait. We can imagine that one person traveled to England or something. And most of the outbreaks happened between the 90s and 2010. I was sort of trying to think about the correlation between, because DRC and there are quite a lot of conflicts, so there could be, that could deteriorate the health system there, and that could be a possibility, knowing that the first war was actually in the mid-90s, so that could be there could be a link there. And one of the other plots that I did, so still looking at the timeline, but this time taking into account something that I was quite interested in, maybe because of my background, but I was wondering if you can see something in the different types of viruses, and also looking at the casualties. And so one of the subtype, which is the Zaire virus, seems to cause a lot of outbreaks and also quite a lot of casualties, followed by the Sudan virus. And yeah, while the other ones don't seem to be as virulent. So do I have a bit? Okay, So I'll not show you how I made this because, again, a hack, I cheated. Because each time I'm creating a chart object, it's generated JSON with the data. So actually when I'm embedding it in the page, which I did before, I get really long JSON because I'm repeating the dataset several times. So this time I use Python to, I converted to a dictionary, so I made my own JSON basically with the data one time, and then all the information I wanted for the plots. And also, this way I was able to add a bit of interactivity manually by creating Python dictionaries and then just converting to JSON. So I'm out of time, sorry. But yeah, I'll just go back to my last slides. Yeah, so my tips, I'll just stress on the watch out for the next release, which will have more capabilities. And the pros, I personally think that's something I can reuse. And I like that there will be more interactivity soon. So I think that's simple enough. I could, if wanted, cooperate with someone else using Git and GitHub. And I can reuse code and create my own templates. My main issue, I haven't seen how to deal with geodata and create maps, which is really useful. So maybe I just need to investigate this more, but there is no example of that in the documentation, and that's it. I'll leave you to have lunch. Yeah, thank you.
Questions? So we can do 2 questions, I think, and then we're just running a little bit behind. Questions? Well, great. You can ask questions over lunch then. There we go. Yeah. Run over there.
Hi, is it possible to serve this up on, say, a Flask or Django server and just make it fully interactive like you're using the notebook in person?
Oh, yeah. I think, you mean the Altair part?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't see why it wouldn't. I just, my point was to not create an app and just, so that's why I use GitHub Pages. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, there is.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.